My hands trembled as I stared at the contract with my forged signature at the bottom. $86,000 for a combined wedding and anniversary celebration I never agreed to. The fancy letterhead from Grand Plaza Hotel swam before my tear-filled eyes. My parents had secretly used my name to merge my wedding with my sister Tracy's anniversary party, telling vendors it was all my idea. When my fiancé Jake saw the document, his face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. But, as the initial shock faded, I felt something unexpected replace it: clarity. After 32 years of living in Tracy's shadow, I finally saw the opportunity for the ultimate revenge. I've always been the responsible one in the family. While my sister Tracy spent her 20s partying and dating wealthy men, I put myself through college, built a career as a financial analyst in Chicago, and saved carefully for my future. Now at 32, I was finally getting my happy ending with Jake, my fiancé of 2 years. Jake worked as a construction manager, and together we'd spent the last 2 years saving $30,000 for our dream wedding at Lakeside Gardens, a charming venue just outside the city. Nothing extravagant, just a meaningful ceremony surrounded by people who truly cared about us. We'd made every decision together, from the flowers to the menu. "This is going to be perfect," Jake had said, when we put down our deposit. "Just like we planned." That should have been my first warning. Nothing in my family ever goes as planned when Tracy is involved. From the time we were children, the pattern was always the same. My accomplishments were footnotes, while Tracy's smallest achievements were celebrated as if she'd cured cancer. When I made honor roll, my mother Margaret would nod and say, "That's nice, dear." When Tracy got a B-, there were special dinners and presents to reward her hard work. "Your sister just needs more encouragement," my father Robert would explain whenever I questioned the disparity. "You've always been so independent." The summer I turned 12, I won a prestigious young writers competition. My parents promised to take me to the awards ceremony, but at the last minute, Tracy's dance recital was rescheduled for the same day. I ended up taking the bus alone to receive my award, while my entire family cheered for Tracy's 3-minute performance as a tulip. When Tracy married Brad 7 years ago, my parents spent over $100,000 on her wedding. Custom designer dress, 5-star hotel, 300 guests, and a honeymoon in Bali. They nearly emptied their retirement savings to give her the wedding she deserved. "We'll do the same for you someday," my mother had promised, patting my hand during the lavish reception. For years, Tracy paraded her seemingly perfect marriage around like a trophy, making sure everyone knew about Brad's successful investment firm and their luxury condo. I was genuinely happy when Jake proposed to me with a modest but meaningful ring that he'd saved for months to buy. The problems began when my mother called 3 months ago, suggesting they help with wedding planning since I was so busy with work. "You've got that big project at your firm, sweetie. The last thing you need is to stress about wedding details," she insisted. "Just give us access to your venue information, and we'll handle the coordination." After some hesitation, I agreed. Jake thought it might be a nice way for my parents to feel involved, and I was indeed swamped at work with a major client account. Over the next few weeks, I noticed my parents making more and more decisions without consulting me. The color scheme I'd chosen was suddenly not quite right for the season. The DJ I'd researched was replaced because my mother found someone much better suited to the family's taste. Jake started to worry. "Are you sure you're okay with all these changes? It feels like they're taking over." "They're just excited," I assured him, though doubt had begun to gnaw at me. Then came the day I stopped by my parents' house to pick up the sample invitations they'd promised to order. They weren't home, but had told me to let myself in and find the samples on the dining room table. When they weren't there, I headed to my father's office to see if he'd left them in there instead. That's when I saw it, a thick contract from the Grand Plaza Hotel, one of the most expensive venues in Chicago. The same place where Tracy and Brad had gotten married. And there, at the bottom, was my signature. A signature I had never written, authorizing payment for a combined wedding and anniversary celebration totaling $86,000. "What is this?" I demanded, slapping the contract down on the kitchen table when my parents returned. My mother's face went pale, while my father's jaw tightened in that familiar way it did whenever he was caught in a lie. "Cynthia, honey, we were going to talk to you about this." My mother began, her voice sickly sweet. "It just makes so much practical sense." "Practical? You forged my signature on a contract for an event I never agreed to at a venue. I never chose for more than double the budget Jake and I set. And you call that practical?" My voice was shaking, but I forced myself to stay calm. My father cleared his throat. Now, Cynthia, let's not be dramatic. We saw an opportunity to combine resources. Tracy and Brad's 7th anniversary is just 2 days after your wedding date. The Grand Plaza had a cancellation, and they offered us a significant discount to book both events together. A discount that still puts the total at $86,000, I pointed out, and you put it all in my name, without asking me. My mother sank into a chair, her expression a practiced mix of hurt and disappointment. We thought you'd be happy. Tracy and Brad are having some financial difficulties since Brad's investment firm took that hit last quarter. They could never afford an anniversary celebration on their own right now. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. So this isn't even about me at all. It's about bailing out Tracy. Again. That's not fair, my father said sternly. Your sister and Brad have always been so generous, hosting family events at their condo, giving you those designer hand-me-downs. Hand-me-downs I never asked for, I cut in. And now you're expecting me to foot the bill for their anniversary party. The sound of the front door opening interrupted our argument. Tracy breezed in her blonde hair, perfectly styled as always, designer sunglasses perched on her head. She took one look at the scene and sighed dramatically. They told you, huh? God, Cynthia, why do you always have to make everything so difficult? I stared at my sister in disbelief. You knew about this the whole time. Tracy rolled her eyes as she dropped her purse on the counter. Of course I knew. Someone had to help them plan it properly. And frankly, you should be thanking me. That little lake place you picked was going to be a disaster. No proper parking, terrible acoustics, and the photo opportunities were practically non-existent. That little lake place is where Jake proposed to me, I said through gritted teeth. It meant something to us. Tracy waved her hand dismissively. Sentiment doesn't make for good wedding photos. Besides, after everything I've done for this family, carrying our reputation with the right social circles, you owe me this. One nice anniversary event to show Brad's clients that everything is fine. I don't owe you anything, I shot back. The front door opened again and Jake walked in. His expression darkened as he took in the scene. What's going on? He asked, coming to stand beside me. Cynthia texted me to come right away. I handed him the contract. My parents decided to combine our wedding with Tracy and Brad's anniversary party at the Grand Plaza for $86,000, and they forged my signature on the contract. Jake's face reddened as he scanned the document. This can't be legal. Legal or not, it's done, my father said firmly. The deposits have been paid. Invitations have been sent. Invitations, Jake and I said in unison. My mother at least had the grace to look embarrassed. We sent them out last week. To both your guest lists, plus some additional family friends. How did you even get our guest list? Jake demanded. My father shrugged. It was on Cynthia's laptop when she came over for dinner last month. The violation of privacy made my stomach churn. So you just decided to hijack our entire wedding, change the venue, the date, the guest list, everything without even asking us. We didn't change the date, my mother corrected. Just expanded the event. The ceremony will be at 4, followed by dinner, and then at 7 there'll be a special anniversary celebration for Tracy and Brad. Jake was still reading through the contract, his face growing increasingly troubled. This says the full amount is due 2 weeks before the event. That's less than 2 months from now. We've already paid the deposit from your wedding fund, my father informed us. The rest can be handled with payment plans. Our wedding fund? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You took money from our account. You gave us access to help with vendor deposits, my mother reminded me. And it's still going toward your wedding, just a better version of it. Jake looked like he was about to explode, but before he could speak, Tracy chimed in again. Oh, and we also invited the Hendersons. They're dying to see you again, Jake. The color drained from Jake's face. The Hendersons were his parents whom he hadn't spoken to in 5 years due to his father's alcoholism and his mother's refusal to acknowledge the problem. You had no right, he whispered. Families should be together at weddings, my mother said firmly. We took the liberty of mending that fence for you. I grabbed Jake's hand, feeling it tremble in mine. This had gone beyond a wedding takeover. They had stomped all over boundaries that they knew were sacred to us, and they expected us to smile and thank them for it. We're leaving, I announced, pulling Jake toward the door. Don't be ridiculous, Tracy called after us. You can't back out now. Everything's arranged. People are making travel plans. I turned back one last time. Watch me. Back at our apartment, Jake paced the living room, while I sat numbly on the couch, still trying to process everything that had happened. The contract sat on our coffee table like a ticking bomb. I can't believe they invited my parents, Jake said for the third time, running his hands through his dark hair. They know what happened. They know why I cut contact. Jake rarely talked about his family. His father's alcoholism had turned violent during Jake's teenage years, and his mother had chosen denial over protection time and again. The final straw came when Jake was 28, and his father showed up drunk to Jake's graduate school ceremony, causing a scene that ended with campus security escorting him out. "We don't have to invite them," I assured him. "We can uninvite them." "That's not the point," Jake said, stopping his pacing to look at me. "The point is they went behind our backs, Cynthia. They violated our trust, our privacy, and our wishes. And now they've tied us to an $86,000 contract." I picked up the document again, forcing myself to think clearly despite my anger. "I didn't sign this. We could fight it legally. And what would that do to your credit? Your professional reputation? This contract has been in place for weeks. Deposits paid, arrangements made." He was right. Even if we could prove forgery, the fallout would be messy and potentially damaging to my career in financial services where trust was everything. We stayed up half the night discussing our options. We could cancel the wedding entirely, but we'd lose our deposits and disappoint the friends and family we actually wanted to celebrate with. We could confront my parents legally, but the consequences would follow us for years. We could give in and accept their version of our wedding, but the thought made both of us sick. At 3 a.m, I was reviewing the contract for the 5th time when I noticed something interesting. The wording specified the wedding ceremony of Cynthia Morgan and Jacob Palmer to be held on June 15th, but it didn't specify the exact time. "Jake," I said slowly, an idea forming, "what if we still had our wedding exactly how we wanted it?" He looked at me, confusion clear on his tired face. "How? They've changed everything." "Not everything." I tapped the contract. "This only specifies the date, not the time. What if we had our real wedding early in the morning at our original venue, with just the people who matter to us? Then later we show up at their event already married." Jake's eyes widened as he considered it. "Do you think Lakeside Gardens would still have our date available for a morning ceremony?" "Only one way to find out," I said, already reaching for my phone despite the hour. The next morning, I called Diane, the manager at Lakeside Gardens. When I explained our situation, leaving out some of the more humiliating details, she was surprisingly sympathetic. "You're not the first bride whose family tried to hijack her wedding," she told me. "As luck would have it, we haven't rebooked your date yet. We could do an 8 a.m. ceremony with a champagne breakfast reception until 11. It would actually cost less than your original booking since it's off-peak hours." "We'll take it," I said immediately, relief flooding through me. Over the next few days, Jake and I developed our plan. We would have our true wedding early in the morning with only our closest friends, people we knew wouldn't accidentally reveal our secret. Then we'd make an appearance at the Grand Plaza event already married, but playing along with my family's charade. We were finalizing our secret guest list when my phone rang. It was my old college roommate, Lauren. "Cynthia, what the hell? Your sister just called me to ask what I'm wearing to your wedding/her anniversary party. Since when did you decide to share your special day?" I groaned. "I didn't decide anything, Lauren. My parents and Tracy took over my wedding without asking me." "That tracks," Lauren snorted. "She'd witnessed enough of my family dynamics during our college years. So what are you going to do about it?" After swearing her to secrecy, I filled her in on our plan. She was immediately on board and offered to help coordinate with our other friends. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I received a text from a cousin in Florida. "Just heard from Tracy that you're trying to steal attention from her anniversary by making the event all about you." "What's going on?" I stared at my phone in disbelief. Tracy was actually spreading rumors that I was the one trying to hijack her anniversary celebration. The audacity was breathtaking, but it only strengthened my resolve to take back control of my wedding day. The next morning, Jake and I met with Diane at Lakeside Gardens to finalize our secret ceremony plans. The venue looked even more beautiful in the morning light, with dew still clinging to the grass and the sun casting a golden glow across the lake. We can set up for 50 people maximum for the morning ceremony, Diane explained as we walked through the garden. The pergola will catch the morning light perfectly for your vows. 50 is more than enough, Jake said, squeezing my hand. Just the people who really care about us. Diane lowered her voice conspiratorially. I've blocked the venue for private event prep from 6 a.m., and I've told the staff this is a special situation. No one will breathe a word about your booking. We spent the next hour going over details, a simplified but elegant floral arrangement, a light breakfast buffet instead of a formal dinner, and a photographer who understood the need for discretion. The total came to just under $12,000, far less than the monstrosity my family had planned. We'll need to send out invitations immediately, I said as we left. Secret invitations just to our inner circle. Jake's best friend Mark, who worked as a bartender at an upscale cocktail bar, offered to help coordinate. I've got plenty of experience managing events behind the scenes, he told us when we met him for lunch that day. And I'm more than happy to help you pull one over on your family after what they did. We created a covert operation worthy of a spy novel. Our real invitations were hand-delivered or sent via private messages, never through regular mail that might be intercepted at my parents' house, or by Tracy's numerous social connections. We told our trusted guests to arrive at Lakeside Gardens by 7:30 in the morning and to tell no one else about the event. Meanwhile, I pretended to accept my parents' version of the wedding. I attended dress fittings at the boutique they'd selected, nodded along during menu tastings at the Grand Plaza, and smiled tightly through planning meetings where Tracy dominated every decision. I think the anniversary dance should happen right after your first dance, Tracy declared during one such meeting. It makes a beautiful transition from your new marriage to our successful one. I bit my tongue and nodded, thinking of how meaningless these details would be once we'd already had our real ceremony. The demands grew more outrageous by the day. Tracy insisted on a 10-minute video tribute to her and Brad's marriage to be played during the reception. My mother decided that the bridesmaids should wear the same dusty rose color that Tracy's bridesmaids had worn 7 years ago for continuity in the family wedding photos. The costs spiraled as well. Tracy selected the most expensive champagne for the anniversary toast. My father upgraded the band to one that had recently played at a celebrity wedding. Brad, who had been notably quiet during most of the planning, suddenly insisted on a raw bar with imported seafood because his clients would expect a certain level of sophistication. After each of these meetings, I'd return home to Jake and work on our real wedding plans with a renewed sense of purpose. We selected simple, meaningful readings for our ceremony. We created a playlist of songs that had been significant throughout our relationship. We asked our friend Tanya, who had introduced us, to officiate the ceremony. A week before the wedding, Tracy called me with what she clearly thought was a brilliant idea. "I've been thinking about your wedding dress design," she said without preamble. "I'd like to wear something complimentary for the anniversary portion of the celebration." Complimentary, how I asked, already dreading her answer. "Same design, different color. The designer said he could easily make a version of your dress in silver for me. It would create such a beautiful visual connection between us." I nearly dropped the phone. "You want to wear a version of my wedding dress to my wedding?" "To your wedding/my anniversary," she corrected. "Don't be selfish, Cynthia. This event is about celebrating both of us." Before I could respond with the string of obscenities forming in my mind, she continued blithely. "Mom already sent him my measurements. It's going to be perfect." That evening, as Jake and I were finalizing the seating chart for our secret ceremony, my mother called to inform me that she expected me to write and deliver a speech honoring Tracy and Brad's perfect marriage during the reception. 3 to 5 minutes should be sufficient, she said, as if dictating a business memo. Focus on their commitment and success, and perhaps mention how you've always looked up to their example. I muted the phone so she wouldn't hear my bitter laugh. Tracy and Brad's marriage was far from perfect, according to the whispers I'd heard from mutual friends. Brad's business troubles had put a strain on their relationship, and Tracy's spending habits hadn't helped. But appearances were everything to my family, and the facade had to be maintained at all costs, especially, it seemed, at my expense. Just when I thought we had everything under control, disaster nearly struck. I was at home reviewing the final details with our secret wedding planner when Tracy showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by to discuss the final arrangement for the... She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the papers spread across my dining table, diagrams of Lakeside Gardens, a morning timeline, and lists of... names that weren't on the official guest list. "What's all this?" she asked, picking up one of the papers before I could stop her. My heart pounded as I quickly gathered the documents. "Just old plans," I said, forcing a casual tone. "From before Mom and Dad decided to upgrade everything. I was going to throw them away." Tracy's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "It looks like you've made a lot of notes on these old plans." "Recent notes. I was just marking what we've changed." I lied, shoving the papers into a drawer, for tax purposes. You know how organized I am about financial records. She didn't seem entirely convinced, but was distracted when her phone chimed with a text message. Her expression shifted as she read it, and she quickly made an excuse to leave. I watched her get into her car from my window, waiting until she had driven away before texting Jake, almost busted, "Be careful with wedding docs." Later that evening, my parents called with another bombshell. They'd invited my ex-boyfriend William to the wedding. "He's the Andersons' nephew, and they're bringing him as their +1, my mother explained. "I didn't think you'd mind since it's been so many years." What she conveniently failed to mention was that William and I had broken up because I'd caught him cheating with Tracy. It had happened 10 years ago before she met Brad, but the betrayal had been doubly painful coming from my own sister. And now my parents were bringing him to my wedding as if that history didn't exist. "Actually, I do mind," I said firmly. "Please uninvite him." "Don't be childish, Cynthia," my father scolded. "The invitations have been sent. The Andersons have confirmed. It would be incredibly rude to rescind now." I hung up without responding, another item added to the growing list of reasons why our secret plan was not just justified, but necessary. 2 weeks before the wedding, the pace of preparations intensified for both our secret ceremony and the official event. I felt like I was living a double life, carefully tracking what I said, to whom to avoid revealing our plans. Jake and I finalized the details for our real ceremony with almost military precision. Diane at Lakeside Gardens had been invaluable, suggesting vendors who could work with our unusual timeline and keeping our secret with unwavering loyalty. "The florist will deliver at 6 a.m., she confirmed during our final walkthrough. "The chairs and archway will be set up the night before and covered. "The breakfast buffet will be ready by 9:30, and everything will be cleared out by 11:30, leaving no trace." Our photographer, a friend of Mark's who specialized in elopements, understood completely. "I'll park around back and come in through the service entrance," she assured us. "And I can have a preliminary set of photos edited and ready to show by that afternoon if you want to have proof for the later event." Meanwhile, I maintained the charade with my family. Each interaction became more difficult as their demands grew increasingly unreasonable. During a family dinner 1 week before the wedding, Tracy spent the entire meal dictating how the day should unfold minute by minute. "After the ceremony, Cynthia and Jake will take photos for exactly 30 minutes, she announced, consulting her color-coded schedule. "Then Brad and I will join for family photos for another 30 minutes. Then, while the guests are having cocktails, we'll do anniversary photos of just Brad and me." My father nodded approvingly. "Efficient planning, Tracy. That's why you're so good at organizing these events." I pushed my food around on my plate, saying little. Jake squeezed my knee under the table, our private signal to stay calm and remember our plan. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside. "I need you to write that speech for Tracy and Brad's anniversary portion by tomorrow. I want to review it before the rehearsal dinner." "I've been a little busy with work," I said. "You know, trying to clear my schedule for the honeymoon." My mother's expression hardened. "This is important, Cynthia. Tracy has always supported your achievements. The least you can do is celebrate hers properly." I bit back a laugh at the revisionist history. Tracy had competed with me at every turn, taking credit for my ideas, minimizing my accomplishments, and making sure she remained the center of attention. But I nodded, dutifully promising to email a draft the next day, a speech I had no intention of ever delivering. Later that week, Tracy insisted on accompanying me to my final dress, fitting another opportunity for her to make the event about herself. "I've lost 5 pounds since the last fitting," she informed the seamstress. "So, my anniversary dress will need to be taken in accordingly." As I stood on the pedestal in my wedding gown, a simple but elegant, a line design with delicate lace detailing, Tracy circled me critically. "The neckline could be more dramatic," she commented. "My dress was much more eye-catching." "I like it this way," I said, firmly meeting her eyes in the mirror. She shrugged. "It's your choice. But people will be comparing it to mine from 7 years ago. And now to my anniversary dress, too. I smiled tightly, thinking how little her opinion would matter once Jake and I had exchanged our vows on our own terms. The Wednesday before the wedding disaster nearly struck again. Jake and I were having lunch with Mark to go over final logistics for our secret ceremony when my workplace phone rang. I excused myself to answer it only to hear the voice of our Lakeside Gardens coordinator on the line. "Miss Morgan, I'm just confirming the final head count for Saturday morning's ceremony. We have 47 guests correct." My blood ran cold. I was at a restaurant around the corner from my office where Tracy was meeting me in 15 minutes to discuss the seating chart for the Grand Plaza event. "I'm sorry this isn't a good time," I said quickly. "Can I call you back from my personal phone in about an hour?" "Of course. I just need the information by end of day for the catering order." I hung up just as I saw Tracy entering the restaurant designer sunglasses perched on her head, scanning the room for me. I quickly texted Mark and Jake at the table. "Tracy's here. Wedding talk, stop." The lunch was excruciating. Tracy dominated the conversation with complaints about Brad. He's being absolutely ridiculous about the cost of the band, and passive-aggressive comments about my appearance. You might want to consider a spray tan before Saturday. The lighting at Grand Plaza is very unforgiving. I nodded and smiled, counting the minutes until I could escape. Just as we were finishing, Tracy's phone rang. She frowned at the screen before answering. "Yes, this is she," she said, then listened for a moment. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at me. "I think you have the wrong number. My sister Cynthia is sitting right here, and she's getting married at the Grand Plaza on Saturday afternoon, not at Lakeside Gardens in the morning." My heart stopped. Somehow someone had called Tracy instead of me. I tried to keep my expression neutral as panic surged through me. Tracy hung up, staring at me suspiciously. That was odd. Someone from Lakeside Gardens calling to confirm a morning wedding booking in your name. I forced a laugh. That is weird. Maybe another Cynthia Morgan. It's not that uncommon a name. The woman asked if I was the sister of the bride. Tracy pressed. How would she know to ask that if it was a different Cynthia Morgan? I shrugged, desperately trying to appear casual. Maybe she got some wires crossed. You know how chaotic wedding planning can be. Tracy didn't look convinced, but was distracted by another call from Brad. I used the opportunity to signal for the check and make a quick exit. Later that afternoon, Jake's confrontation with his estranged father nearly derailed everything. John Henderson had called Jake directly, demanding to know the details of the rehearsal dinner and what role he would be playing in the ceremony. "After 5 years, that's what he leads with," Jake said, pacing our living room. No apology, no acknowledgement of why I cut contact. Just demands about being included in the wedding. "What did you tell him?" I asked, worried about how this might affect our plans. I told him that the arrangements had been made without our input and that I'd get back to him. Jake ran his hands through his hair in frustration. I almost told him about our real ceremony out of spite Cynthia. I wanted him to know he wasn't invited to the wedding that actually matters to us. I wrapped my arms around him. "I know this is hard. We just need to hold it together for a few more days. Then we can deal with family boundaries on our own terms." The pressure continued to mount as the wedding day approached. I was working extra hours to clear my schedule for our honeymoon while simultaneously maintaining the charade with my family and finalizing details for our secret ceremony. The night before the wedding, my parents hosted a lavish rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant. Tracy and Brad were seated at the head table, with us creating the impression of a joint celebration. I noticed the strain between them, the way Tracy flinched when Brad touched her arm, the tight smile Brad wore whenever Tracy spoke about their perfect marriage. At the end of the dinner, my father stood to make a toast. "Tomorrow is a special day for our family," he announced to the gathered guests. "Not only will we be welcoming Jake officially into our family, but we'll be celebrating 7 wonderful years of marriage between Tracy and Brad. 2 unions, 1 celebration, and 1 family, coming together in joy." The guests applauded as Jake and I exchanged glances. Little did they know how different tomorrow would actually be. As the dinner wound down, my parents presented us with an envelope. "You're half of the final payment," my father said quietly. $86,000 total minus the deposits already paid. Your portion comes to $43,000 due tomorrow morning. I stared at the figure on the statement. Even split in half, It was far more than the $30,000 Jake and I had budgeted for our entire wedding. And of course, we'd already spent $12,000 on our secret ceremony at Lakeside Gardens. This is more than we agreed to, Jake said, his voice dangerously calm. My father's expression hardened. The costs increased as the plans evolved. That's normal for any major event. What's not normal is planning an event without consulting the people paying for it, I pointed out. Oh, for heaven's sake, Tracy interjected. Are we really going to argue about money the night before the wedding? How tacky. Tacky, Jake repeated incredulously. What's tacky is hijacking someone else's wedding to throw yourself an anniversary party you can't afford. The table fell silent. Tracy's cheeks flushed red as Brad stared down at his plate. Jake, my mother said in a warning tone. This is hardly the time or place. When is the time, Mrs. Morgan? Jake asked. You've dictated every aspect of this wedding without consulting us. You've invited people we specifically didn't want there. You've more than doubled the budget, and now you're presenting us with a bill we never agreed to. We've always treated Cynthia exactly the same as Tracy, my father insisted, his voice rising. We gave Tracy the wedding she deserved, and now we're doing the same for Cynthia. Except you paid for Tracy's wedding, I pointed out. And you're expecting us to pay for both my wedding and Tracy's anniversary. That's different, my mother said dismissively. Your circumstances are different. You mean because Tracy married rich, I challenged. Not so rich anymore, Brad muttered, earning a glare from my sister. Tracy suddenly burst into tears. It's not my fault Brad's business failed, she sobbed. We lost everything. The condo is being foreclosed next month. The table fell silent again as this revelation sank in. Why didn't you tell us things were that bad? I asked, genuinely shocked. Tracy wiped at her mascara-stained cheeks. Because I didn't want to ruin your moment, she said, though the bitterness in her tone belied her words. And because I was hoping Brad would figure something out before everyone found out what a failure he is. Brad pushed back from the table. I'm done being your scapegoat, Tracy. I told you we couldn't afford this anniversary party, but you insisted we had to keep up appearances. So you're announcing our divorce at my sister's rehearsal dinner instead, classy Brad. Tracy's veneer had completely cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. Divorce. My mother looked like she might faint. What are you talking about? Brad looked at Tracy, then at my parents. We've been separated for 3 months. The only reason we're still keeping up appearances is because Tracy insisted we wait until after this anniversary party to tell everyone. I sat back stunned. All this time, the perfect marriage Tracy had been throwing in everyone's face had been falling apart. The extravagant anniversary celebration wasn't a celebration at all. It was a final performance before the curtain fell. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for my sister. Then I remembered how she and my parents had manipulated and used us for their own purposes, and the sympathy faded. I think we're done here, I said quietly, standing up. Jake stood with me, his hand firm on my lower back. Cynthia, wait, my mother called as we headed for the door. We need to resolve this before tomorrow. I turned back one last time. You're right. So here's what's going to happen. Jake and I will be at the Grand Plaza tomorrow as planned. We'll participate in your event. But we're only paying our original budget of $30,000. You and Tracy can figure out how to cover the rest. But the contract, my father began. The contract you forged my signature on, I raised an eyebrow. I'd be careful about pushing that point if I were you. With that, Jake and I left both of us feeling the strange mix of anxiety and exhilaration that comes with standing your ground for the first time. Are you okay? Jake asked as we drove home. I thought about it for a moment. Oddly, yes. Tomorrow morning we're getting married our way with people who actually care about us. Whatever drama happens after that is just noise. Jake smiled, lifting my hand to kiss it. Less than 12 hours until you're my wife. The real way. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with last-minute details and contingency plans. What if someone from my family discovered our secret and showed up at Lakeside Gardens? What if the weather turned bad for our outdoor ceremony? What if the caterer mixed up the times? At 4:30 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Jake. We'd decided to follow one tradition. At least spending the night before the wedding apart would have raised too many suspicions with my parents. But we'd planned to get ready separately, with Jake heading to Mark's apartment at 5 to prepare for our 8 a.m. ceremony. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the sky lighten from black to deep blue to the soft pink of dawn. In a few hours, I would be marrying the man I loved in the way we'd chosen. The thought calmed my nerves and brought a smile to my face. Jake found me there when he woke at 5. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, kissing the top of my head. "Ready to get married today," he murmured into my hair. "More than ready," I replied, leaning back against his chest. We shared a quiet moment together before the whirlwind began. Jake left for Mark's apartment with his suit and everything he needed for both ceremonies. I packed my dress for the lakeside wedding in a garment bag, carefully ensuring it wouldn't wrinkle during transport. Just as I was about to call a rideshare to take me to Lauren's house, where I'd be getting ready, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Good morning, darling," she chirped, sounding more cheerful than she had at the rehearsal dinner. "I'm on my way to your apartment to help you prepare. I've brought breakfast and mimosas." I froze. This was not part of the plan. "Mom, that's really not necessary," I said quickly. I was just about to head to the salon for my hair appointment. "Perfect timing, then. I'll drive you. I'm only 5 minutes away." Before I could protest further, she hung up. I frantically texted Lauren emergency. "Mom coming to pick me up. Need new plan." Lauren, bless her, responded immediately. "Stall her. I'll come to you. Say you're running late." I quickly hid my garment bag with the real wedding dress in the back of my closet behind winter coats we never used. Then I jumped in the shower to buy some time. When my mother arrived 10 minutes later, I answered the door in my bathrobe with wet hair. "Sorry, running a bit behind," I said, forcing a smile. "Come in. I just need to dry my hair." My mother bustled in, arms full of bags. "No problem, sweetie. We have plenty of time. The hairstylist isn't expecting you until 10, and the ceremony isn't until 4. I retreated to the bathroom, sending more frantic texts to Lauren and Jake. This was exactly the kind of complication we'd feared, my mother's sudden desire to play the caring, involved parent on my wedding day after months of prioritizing Tracy's needs over mine. While I deliberately took an extended time drying my hair, Lauren executed our backup plan. She showed up at my apartment 30 minutes later, dressed for her role as bridesmaid and carrying a garment bag. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, hugging me as if we hadn't been texting frantically for the past half hour. "Traffic was terrible." She turned to my mother with a bright smile. "Mrs. Morgan, wonderful to see you again. I've got Cynthia's special morning outfit right here." My mother looked confused. "Morning outfit? I thought she'd just wear something comfortable to the salon." Lauren winked at me. "It's a bridesmaid tradition. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, all in a special getting ready outfit. The other girls are already at the salon setting up." Before my mother could question this invented tradition, Lauren had whisked me into my bedroom to change. Once the door was closed, she unzipped her garment bag to reveal my actual wedding dress. "Mark is parked around the corner with a change of clothes for after your real ceremony," she whispered. "We'll go to the salon as a diversion, then claim we're taking you for a private bridesmaid lunch. That's our window for the real ceremony." I could have cried with gratitude. "You're a lifesaver." Lauren helped me fold my dress into her large tote bag hidden underneath normal clothes. When we emerged from the bedroom, I was wearing a simple sundress that could plausibly be a getting-ready outfit. "Don't you look lovely?" my mother said, though I could tell she was still confused by this deviation from her plan. "Shall we get going? I thought we could stop for proper breakfast on the way to the salon." "Actually, Mrs. Morgan," Lauren interjected smoothly, "the other bridesmaids have ordered breakfast at the salon. They're waiting for us. Why don't you head to the Grand Plaza to oversee the setup, and I'll make sure Cynthia gets to her hair appointment." My mother hesitated, clearly torn between wanting to control my mourning and needing to supervise the venue preparations, especially after last night's revelations about Tracy and Brad's marriage. "Well, I suppose Tracy might need some support this morning," she said finally. "But I'll see you at the hotel by 1 o'clock for makeup and final preparations, Cynthia." "Of course, Mom," I assured her, knowing I'd be married by then. Once my mother left, Lauren and I moved quickly. Mark picked us up around the corner and we headed straight to Lakeside Gardens. The morning was clear and beautiful, with just enough breeze to ruffle the surface of the lake. Diane met us at the service entrance, looking calm and collected. "Everything is on schedule," she assured us. "The florist finished setting up the ceremony space 20 minutes ago. The chairs are arranged, the arch is decorated, and the breakfast buffet is being prepared as we speak." In the small bridal suite overlooking the garden, I changed into my real wedding dress. Not the one my mother and Tracy had pushed me to buy, but the one I had secretly ordered online and had altered by a seamstress friend. It was simpler than the dress for the afternoon ceremony, but to me far more beautiful. As Lauren helped me with the buttons, there was a knock at the door. Mark poked his head in. "Jake's here," he said with a grin. "And he's a nervous wreck, but in a good way." I laughed, feeling my own butterflies, but none of the dread I'd been expecting to feel on my wedding day. "Tell him I'll be ready on time." At 7:45, our guests began arriving. From the window, I could see them gathering in the garden, just 47 people who truly cared about us. No distant relatives invited out of obligation. No business associates included for networking purposes. No ex-boyfriends dragged along to satisfy family politics. At 8 o'clock precisely, Lauren squeezed my hand. "Ready." I took a deep breath and nodded. More than ready. The ceremony was everything we'd hoped for. I walked down the short aisle on my own. A choice that would have horrified my father, but felt perfectly right to me. Jake waited under the floral arch, his face lighting up when he saw me. Our friend Tanya performed the ceremony with personal touches that reflected our relationship. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to support each other's dreams, to communicate honestly, to be partners in every sense of the word. "With this ring, I promise to stand by your side even when facing family drama," Jake added with a wink that made our guests laugh. When Tanya pronounced us husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in genuine cheers. Jake and I shared our first kiss as a married couple, with the morning sun shining on the lake behind us, surrounded by people who respected our choices and supported our relationship. The reception was simple but joyful. A champagne breakfast with our closest friends, photographs in the garden, and heartfelt toasts that celebrated our journey together. Our photographer worked quickly, capturing candid moments and group shots that showed the authentic happiness of the day. By 10:30, she had already downloaded a selection of images to her laptop to show us. "I'll have these edited and ready to send to your phone by 3 o'clock, she promised. "Just in time for your other event." At 11:15, as planned, our friends helped clear away any evidence of our presence, returning the garden to its pristine condition. Jake and I changed into casual clothes and slipped away to a nearby hotel room we'd booked for the purpose. "Mrs. Palmer," Jake said as he closed the door behind us. "We actually did it." "We did," I agreed, feeling a mix of triumph and lingering anxiety about the afternoon ahead. Now for Act 2. We had a few hours before we needed to be at the Grand Plaza. We ordered room service lunch and tried to rest, knowing the second half of the day would require all our energy and composure. At 1:30, my mother called in a panic. "Cynthia, where are you? You were supposed to be at the hotel half an hour ago." "Sorry, Mom," I said, feigning a casual tone. "Lauren and I lost track of time during our bridesmaid lunch. We're on our way now." When we arrived at the Grand Plaza at 2 o'clock, the contrast to our morning ceremony couldn't have been more stark. The opulent ballroom was decked out in elaborate floral arrangements, far more lavish than anything Jake and I would have chosen. A string quartet played in the corner, and hotel staff bustled about arranging table settings for 300 guests. My mother intercepted us in the lobby, her face tight with stress. "Finally, everyone's been waiting for you. Tracy's already in the bridal suite. Your hair and makeup team has been here since noon." I allowed myself to be whisked away to the bridal suite where Tracy sat in a silk robe getting her makeup done. She barely acknowledged my arrival, too busy instructing the makeup artist on the exact shade of eyeshadow she wanted. "There you are," she said, when she finally noticed me. "Mom's been having a meltdown. You know how she gets when the schedule is disrupted." I said nothing, simply hanging up the garment bag containing my second wedding dress of the day. This one was more elaborate, with beading, and a longer train chosen primarily to please my mother and Tracy rather than reflect my own taste. As the hairstylist began working on my hair, Tracy filled the silence with chatter about the event. "Brad and I had a long talk last night," she said, examining her manicure. "We've decided to put on a united front today. No reason to spoil the celebration with our personal issues." I nodded, thinking how ironic it was that they were maintaining their charade at my wedding just as Jake and I were maintaining ours. The difference was that our secret was joyful, while theirs was built on pretense and failed dreams. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. Makeup, hairstyling, putting on the elaborate dress, photographers documenting every moment as if these preparations were the real beginning of my marriage, not knowing I had already spoken my vows hours earlier. At 3:45, my father came to escort me to the ceremony. He looked distinguished in his tuxedo, pride, evident in his expression, pride not for me, I realized, but for the event itself, for the impression it would make on their friends and social circle. "You look beautiful, Cynthia," he said, offering his arm. "Just as lovely as Tracy was on her day. Even now the comparison. Always the measuring, always Tracy as the benchmark." I smiled tightly and took his arm, feeling the weight of my real wedding ring under my glove. As we prepared to walk down the aisle, I caught Jake's eye at the front of the ballroom. He gave me a subtle wink, our private acknowledgement, that this was just theater, that our real commitment had already been made beside the lake at sunrise. The string quartet began playing the wedding march, and my father and I started our procession through the crowd of mostly strangers. This was the wedding my parents had wanted. Showy, expensive, impressive. The wedding that would maintain appearances for Tracy and Brad's failing marriage. The wedding that had never been about Jake and me at all. As we reached the altar and my father placed my hand in Jake's eye, squeezed Jake's fingers 3 times, our secret signal. He squeezed back his eyes, crinkling slightly at the corners. We were already married. This was just a performance, and we were about to change the script. The officiant began the ceremony with the standard welcome. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Cynthia Morgan and Jacob Palmer in holy matrimony." Jake and I stood hand in hand, playing our parts perfectly. When asked for the rings, Jake's best man Mark stepped forward with the second set of rings we'd purchased for this ceremony, less meaningful than the ones we'd exchanged that morning, but necessary props for our performance. Just as the officiant asked if anyone objected to our union, I gave Jake the signal we'd arranged. He cleared his throat and stepped forward slightly. "Before we continue," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom, "Cynthia and I have something we'd like to share with everyone." A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. My mother's face froze in a panicked smile while my father frowned deeply. "Cynthia," he hissed, "what's going on?" I stepped forward to stand beside Jake, taking his hand firmly in mine. "Thank you all for coming today," I began. "We're touched that so many of you could join us for this celebration. However, there's been a slight change to the program." From her seat in the front row, Tracy was glaring at me, clearly sensing that her carefully orchestrated event was about to be disrupted. I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. "Jake and I were actually married this morning in a private ceremony at Lakeside Gardens, surrounded by our closest friends." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. My mother swayed slightly, and my father's face flushed deep red. "We wanted our actual wedding to reflect our values and relationship," Jake added. "So we had a simple, meaningful ceremony at sunrise." On cue, Mark stepped forward with a tablet, displaying our wedding photos from that morning. I took it and turned to show my parents. "This was our real wedding," I said quietly. "The one we planned and paid for ourselves." The photos scrolled through on the tablet, Jake and I exchanging vows by the lake. Our first kiss as husband and wife, the joyful celebration with our true friends. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "You went behind our backs. After everything we've done for you." "After everything you did to us," I corrected her. "You forged my signature on a contract. You used our wedding as cover for Tracy's anniversary party. You invited people we specifically asked not to include. You made decisions about our day without consulting us once." The assembled guests were dead silent now, watching the family drama unfold with horrified fascination. "We're still here," Jake pointed out. "We still showed up for this event, even knowing it wasn't really about us. But we refuse to let your deception take away our chance at a meaningful beginning to our marriage." Tracy stood up, her face contorted with rage. "How dare you? You've ruined everything. This was supposed to be a perfect day." "Perfect for whom?" I asked calmly. "For you and Brad to pretend your marriage isn't falling apart. For Mom and Dad to show off to their friends. It certainly wasn't designed to be perfect for Jake and me." Brad, who had been sitting silently beside Tracy, suddenly stood up as well. "She's right, Tracy. This whole thing has been a charade. I'm done pretending." My father stepped forward, clearly trying to salvage the situation. "Everyone, please. Let's not create a scene. The ceremony can continue as planned. The ceremony has already happened, I interrupted, holding up my left hand to show the wedding ring I'd been wearing under my glove. Jake and I are already legally married. This was just meant to be a performance to satisfy your need for appearances. I turned to address the assembled guests directly. We apologize to those of you who came expecting a wedding ceremony. As you can see, we've already been married. However, we'd be honored if you'd join us for the reception to celebrate our marriage, and only our marriage. The emphasis on those last words was unmistakable. Tracy let out a strangled sound of outrage, but it was drowned out by the uncertain murmuring of the crowd. Jake's parents, who had been seated near the back at my mother's arrangement, not ours, stood up to leave. Jake stepped down from the altar and approached them. "Dad, Mom." His voice was firm but not unkind. "I didn't want you here because you've never respected my boundaries or my choices. Today, Cynthia and I chose to start our marriage honestly. If you want to be part of our lives moving forward, you'll need to respect our decisions and our relationship. Otherwise, this is goodbye." His father seemed about to argue, but then surprisingly nodded stiffly and sat back down. His mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Meanwhile, my parents were having a heated, whispered argument with Tracy and Brad. I could see Tracy gesturing angrily toward me while my mother tried to calm her down. Brad had disengaged, entirely staring blankly into the distance. I turned back to our guests. The reception will begin as scheduled in the adjoining ballroom. There's plenty of food, music, and celebration to be had. The only change to the program is that there will no longer be an anniversary portion of the evening. With that, Jake and I walked hand in hand down the aisle and out the double doors of the ceremony room, followed by uncertain applause from some guests and stunned silence from others. In the private anteroom where we had arranged to meet Mark after the revelation, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. "That was intense," Jake said, loosening his tie. "You were amazing." "So were you," I replied, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Do you think they'll all leave?" Mark grinned. "Are you kidding? Free food and premium drama? They'll stick around just to see what happens next." He was right. When we entered the reception ballroom 30 minutes later, most of the guests had indeed stayed. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed entertained, but all were curious about what would unfold. My parents approached us immediately, my mother's careful makeup streaked with tears, my father's jaw set in anger. "How could you humiliate us like this?" my mother demanded in a harsh whisper. "In front of everyone we know, the same way you were willing to put us $86,000 in debt without our consent," Jake replied evenly. "The difference is our actions only affected your pride. Yours would have affected our financial future." My father turned to me, ignoring Jake completely. "Cynthia, you will explain to everyone that this was a misunderstanding, that your mourning ceremony was just a private blessing or something similar. You will not embarrass this family further." I met his gaze steadily. "No, Dad, I won't. The truth is already out there. Jake and I are married, legally married this morning, just as we wanted to be. What happens now is up to you," meaning what he demanded. "Meaning you can either accept our decision and try to enjoy the party, or you can make a scene and embarrass yourselves further," I explained. "Either way, Jake and I are going to celebrate with the people who are happy for us." I glanced around the room, noticing that Tracy and Brad were nowhere to be seen. "Where's Tracy?" My mother's expression crumpled further. "She left. She said she couldn't bear to watch you steal her special day." I couldn't help but laugh. Her special day at my wedding. "It was supposed to be a combined celebration," my father insisted. "To save money and bring the family together." "To save you money," Jake corrected. "Not us. We're still paying for our original ceremony, plus the $30,000 we agreed to contribute to this event. The additional $43,000 you tried to charge us will have to come from somewhere else." My parents exchanged worried glances. "The vendors need to be paid tonight," my mother said quietly. "We don't have that kind of money available on short notice. Not since you emptied your accounts for Tracy's wedding 7 years ago. I finished for her. And not since you've been helping her and Brad stay afloat as their marriage crumbled." My father's shoulders sagged slightly, the first sign of defeat I'd ever seen from him. "What do you suggest we do then?" "Pay the bill you created," I said, simply. "Take out a loan if you have to. Explain to Tracy that you can't bail her out anymore. Set boundaries like Jake and I are doing right now. The DJ announced that dinner would be served, shortly saving my parents from having to respond. They retreated to their table heads bent together in urgent conversation. The reception proceeded with a strange mix of tension and celebration. Most guests did their best to enjoy the excellent food and open bar, politely avoiding mention of the ceremony drama. Our true friends, the ones who had attended our morning wedding, were relaxed and happy, forming a protective circle around us. Jake's parents approached us midway through the evening. His mother spoke first, her voice uncertain. "The pictures from this morning, you both looked very happy." Jake nodded. We are. Your father and I have made many mistakes," she continued, glancing at her husband. "We'd like a chance to do better if you're willing." "That depends on whether you can respect our boundaries," Jake said firmly, "starting with accepting that Cynthia and I make our own decisions." His father, looking uncomfortable but determined, extended his hand to me. "Congratulations. Welcome to the family." It was a small step, but a significant one. Jake and I exchanged glances silently, agreeing to proceed with cautious optimism. As the evening wound down, my childhood best friend Amanda approached me with a small box. "I wasn't sure whether to give you this, given everything that's happened," she said hesitantly. "But I think you should see it." Inside the box were dozens of notes and cards, evidence of years of manipulation by Tracy. There were emails where she'd canceled plans we'd made without telling me, text messages where she'd spread rumors about me to mutual friends, even a draft of a letter to my college boyfriend suggesting I was cheating on him. "I've been collecting these for years," Amanda explained. "I tried to tell you before, but you always wanted to believe the best of her. I thought maybe now you'd be ready to see the truth." I closed the box feeling strangely calm rather than angry. "Thank you for this, but I don't need it anymore. I've already made my choice to stop enabling the dysfunction in my family." As the reception came to a close, my parents approached us one last time. They looked tired and defeated, but there was something new in their expressions, a reluctant respect perhaps. "We've spoken to the hotel management," my father said. "We'll be covering the remaining balance. Your $30,000 contribution will be sufficient." "Thank you," I said simply. My mother hesitated, then added, "Your morning ceremony. The photos looked lovely." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. I decided to accept it as a starting point. "It was perfect for us," I replied, "just like we wanted." 1 month after our double wedding day, Jake and I returned from our honeymoon to a changed family landscape. Tracy had finally admitted to her friends that she and Brad were separating and had begun therapy to address her competitive behavior and need for attention. My parents had started making tentative efforts to treat me as an adult with my own agency, though old habits died hard. Jake had established careful boundaries with his parents, allowing for short, structured visits that would gradually increase if they continued to respect our limits. So far, they were trying their best. As for Jake and I, our marriage had begun exactly as we'd wanted, with honesty, integrity, and the courage to stand up for ourselves. The morning ceremony by the lake remained our true wedding day in our hearts, while the Grand Plaza event had become a turning point in our family dynamics. Sometimes the most important family isn't the one you're born into, but the one you choose and create. By refusing to play the roles assigned to us and insisting on writing our own story, Jake and I had not only preserved our special day, but had also laid the foundation for healthier relationships with our families moving forward. The journey wouldn't be easy. Decades of patterns couldn't be changed overnight, but we had taken the first crucial step, defining our marriage on our terms, not anyone else's. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure to protect your relationship? Comment below with your experiences navigating difficult family dynamics around important life events. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries with family. Thank you for listening to my story today, and I hope it inspires you to honor your own truth, even when it's the harder path to take.